My name's Spencer Hazard, and I'm going to go through all the gear I used on the new Full of Hell record, Coagulated Bliss. This is probably the most expansive amount of gear we use on a record. I didn't bring everything today, and we used a bunch of stuff in the studio, but I'll go through a vast majority of it, starting with guitars. It's the main C standard guitar we use on the record. It is a Developing Nations custom aluminum neck based off a Les Paul Jr. Pro 1. This is my third Developing Nations guitar I've had now. First one I had got stolen with the van years ago, but this guitar I've used on the last few records. Like I used it on the Nothing collaboration, the Primitive Man collaboration, used it on most of Garden as well. But yeah, this is my main C standard guitar. This is the guitar I laid down most of the main tracks on the new record. Next up, have a Vintera Jazzmaster that you can see has been pretty beat up. This is my main live guitar as well. This is a guitar I would do like a bunch of overdubs on the C standard stuff. It is set up with a just Duncan JB. The only difference is it has spacing for a Floyd Rose, which I think actually makes it a little hotter. All the electronics are ripped out of it. You can see it's being taped together now. It's got a bunch of cracks and dents in it. Because like I said, this is my main live guitar. We end up throwing our gear around a bunch. But yeah, still sounds good. Still my favorite guitar I play, favorite guitar I own. Probably going to retire it soon just because, like I said, it's starting to get pretty beat up. I'll probably just start using it for recordings. Another C standard guitar. Had this guitar for a few years. It is a Japanese Fender Telecaster Thinline. Wanted to get Thinline just because the hollow body definitely gives it a different tone. Surprisingly, I found that hollow bodies, for the most part, sound really good doing the more doomy sounding stuff. So on the new record, there's the one track, super slow, super heavy. So this was the main guitar I used on that. I used to play it live in iFlies because it sounds good for that type of stuff. But for Full of Hell, it chafes your arm up too much just because there's no contour in it. One of the main guitars I used on the Primitive Man collaboration. This is a Fender Mod Shop Jazzmaster. Had this specifically made in the mod shop right before the recording of the record. It didn't get used that much. It was actually really good for a couple clean tones that are actually on the record. But it's stock, and surprisingly it sounds really good run through a high gain amp. You can't really tell it has the single coil Jazzmaster pickups in it. Last C standard guitar I used on the record. This was mainly just used for overdubs. Not a lot of main guitar recording on this guitar. It has Jazzmaster EMG pickups with the Jazzmaster interactive pickguard. It sounded really good for when we were recording directly into the board or the interface, and we would just run a couple distortion pedals in front of it to give it an extra nasty tone, and the EMGs were the best sounding for that specific tone. This is my main E-flat guitar I've used on tour for the last couple years. It's a Kurt Cobain signature Jaguar. As you can see, I've gutted everything out of it, and it almost gives it a semi-hollow tone. A lot of the E-flat stuff on the new record is this, plus Kevin at Developing Nations, who did the record, had an 80s Les Paul custom Silverburst. That was the other main guitar I used. But yeah, this was a lot for, you know, we would do two sides, record both sides, and this was like a different voiced humbucker compared to what was in the Les Paul. Another E-flat guitar, I have Vintera Jazzmaster. I switched out the classic bridge for just a two-pneumatic bridge. This guitar only used for overdubs on the E-flat stuff, just because I keep the pickup stock and it's just, it has a jangly tone, so it's good to give it a more brittle tone underneath the humbuckers, especially if we wanted it like a more noise rock or like post-punk vibe to the song. Like this like cut through very well. Last guitar I used is an alternate reality Fender 12 electric 12 string. Didn't get to use this a whole bunch, mainly just for like undertones and overdubs and like some like more percussive stuff underneath the songs. I would like to be able to use it more. It's just hard, especially for metal and stuff, to use a 12 string. I use this a lot on the last Sword Dream record. But yeah, it's like I really, really like it for, like I said, undertones and doing percussive stuff. As far as amps, a couple amps not here today that I use includes a Fender Princeton, Fender Vibrolux, and a Dean Costello Heavy Metal Warfare. This is just my live cab. We didn't use this in the studio. We actually used a couple of the studio cabinets. We used like an 80s orange 4x12 and a 70s orange 2x12. We used the green Matamp GT120 for like a lot of the slower stuff on the record. So it only got used a couple times, but it's such a distinct tone that's like I always bring it to like every recording session we do now. Main amps I used on the record was the Matamp GT1. This is like a less gainy rocker verb. It's definitely the loudest amp I've ever used. It has such a distinct tone and it blended super well with the Dean Costello. I'm pretty sure this amp is almost on every single track of the new record. TH100, my favorite orange amp. I've probably talked about this a million times in other interviews and stuff. Like, I don't bring them on tour constantly because they're just like hard to find, but I try to bring them out as much as I can. This didn't get as much use on the record as I would like. It's usually almost on every single record we've done, but I think it's only on like a few tracks for overdubs. But like I said, it's still probably my favorite amp of all time. Here's some of the pedals I used on the record. There's a lot more, just like hard to find, but I try to bring them out as much as I can. This didn't get as much use on the record as I would like. It's usually the main ones and ones that stick out to me for like overdubs and undertones on all the record. Few tracks just have a classic, but like I said, it's cheap rat pedal, great from Guitar Center. Nothing special, just right off the shelf. Pedal that was actually used a ton is this Jupiter Effects Fuzz Monstrosity, which is like a collaboration with the band Nothing. Nikki gave this to me when we were, right before we went into the studio to record the collab together. Used it a ton on Bleeding Horizon, which is like a super like drony sounding tone. So make it more blown out or more noisy and like a wild like fuzz sound. Pedal I never leave without Earthquaker Dispatch Master, my favorite delay ever. Use it a ton live, use it on almost every recording that we've ever done. Probably my favorite phase besides the Phase 90. Like, I like the Phase 90 because it's so simple. But this, you can get like classic phase tones or more modern, like crazy effects. Like I said, I mainly just like it for like something a little more
the Speed Tripper
than
by
the
Audio.
Phase 90, but nothing.
Probably one of my favorite
as crazy
pedals
as
ever
you
made.
make it.
It is
Probably my favorite pedal ever.
limited edition
is
for the
limited edition
Levitation
for
Festival
the
in Austin,
Levitation
Texas.
Festival in Austin,
It
Texas.
is a delay that trails off into a fuzz or a phase sound.
I mean, I use it a ton live. Use it a bunch on the new record. I have it pretty tame right now, but you can get it pretty uncontrollable. So yeah, I mean, the new record, Butthole Surfers, is a huge inspiration on the record for us. So like, to me, this pedal is just like Butthole Surfers in a box. Like, just crazy, blown out. Like, if you think of psychedelic music, like, that is essentially what you hear. Next pedal on my board is Dimension C. Probably my favorite sounding chorus pedal that I've like ever played. I used the Boss like multi-course for many years until I switched to this one. It is kind of like limited in what it does, but I like that aspect of it. It like is very 80s like post-punk sounding to me. Couple other pedals that we used a bunch on the record that aren't on my board. We got the Acapulco Gold by Earthquaker. Use this a bunch on the song Bleeding Horizon. Another Earthquaker we used a bunch on bass and overdubs is the original Life pedal. Sounds amazing on bass and bass 6. I don't think it got used much on guitar, just mainly on like I said, different bass tracks. Got the pinned pedal by Death by Audio. This was one of the main pedals we used when we were doing just running the guitar through the interface with the Jazzmaster with the EMGs. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like a couple different fuzzes stacked on top of each other. Like you said, like you can see, it's got 3 gain stages on it, plus like I think a filter. I mean, it is awesome for if you want to get like some noisy, just like blown out sounding guitar stuff. Pedal that gets used
on a ton of records, doesn't get used live much. Death by Audio, Waveform Destroyer. Just got one master volume and then 3 different filters and fuzz sounds. Yet again, another pedal we use a bunch with the Bass 6. It sounds awesome for bass stuff. It's just like the most blown out, fucked up bass sound you can ask for. I know we used it, besides the new record, we used it a bunch on Garden on the bass stick stuff as well. Just standard Death by Audio Fuzzwar. Yeah, use this pedal a bunch live for like the more blown out heavy sounding stuff. Pretty sure we used it a couple times for bass as well. Damnation Audio, Ugly Twin, Piss Jeans, Signature, Fuzz Pedal. We didn't use this exact one, but we used the original Ugly Twin with, I think without the 3 foot switches on it. Ran that through Fender Princeton with my Jaguar with the single coil pickups on the song Coagulated Bliss. It's just like we wanted a pretty pure fuzz tone, and like you can get a pretty pure fuzz sound through this, or just like disgusting, completely fucked up. So like, I mean, even with it running through such a clean amp as the Princeton, it sounded beyond disgusting. Got a Dirge slowly melting. Didn't use this a bunch on instruments, but we used, Kevin has a double slowly melting in his studio. We use it a bunch on vocal overdubs, not a ton on instrumentation.